What happens when two powerhouse voices, Kelly Clarkson and Faith Hill, sit across from each other on live television, and a simple conversation about music turns into a battle of pride, pain, and power? And things get so heated that security has to step in? This isn't just an interview gone wrong. This is a clash that stripped away the smiles and exposed what really happens when authenticity meets ego under the studio lights. Kelly opened with that easy Texas smile. The band hit a light sting, and the audience clapped like they'd been waiting all week for this. Faith walked out calm and polished, black blazer sharp, wave measured, every move saying she'd done this 1,000 times. Kelly stood to hug her, the kind of quick TV hug that's warm but keeps the cameras in mind. They took their seats. Kelly thanked her for coming and joked about two moms talking music, and the crowd loved it. Faith smiled back, but her eyes didn't match the smile, just a flick of caution that only shows up when the lights hit. Kelly rolled right into small talk. Tour buses, early gigs, kids' playlists, and everything sounded smooth. Kelly shifted into fan mode and started listing Faith's trophy case, 40+ million albums, 5 Grammys, Vegas with Tim, the whole run. Faith nodded along, then dropped, "Success comes in many forms. Some of us built it brick by brick, others found shortcuts, and she let it sit." The audience chuckled like they thought it was a bit, then the laughs died off fast when Faith didn't smile. Kelly blinked once, steady, then said she respected every path and loved learning from artists who came before her. To cool it down, Kelly pivoted into the new tour and the Back to Your Roots set list, giving Faith a clean lane to talk music. Faith took the lane, then swerved. Sometimes people need a reminder where real talent comes from. Not everyone gets a reality TV springboard. The temperature dipped a few degrees. You could feel it even through the cameras. Kelly kept eye contact, nodded once, and said Idol opened doors for folks who never had a shot and that the music still has to stand on its own. Faith tilted her chin, not quite a smirk, more like a dare. Kelly's fingers tapped her mug and then went still, the way they do when she decides to pick her spot. Kelly tried to steady the room by asking about Faith's writing process, trying to bring the talk back to craft. "You've written so many of your own songs," she said. "I really respect that." Faith smiled thinly. "Well, that's the job, isn't it?" "To actually write them," Kelly chuckled, thinking it was still playful, and said, "I write too. Or co-write, since the early days. Since You've Been Gone. Because of You. Those were mine." The air changed. Faith tilted her head, voice calm but sharp. "I'm sure that's rewarding, working with all those big-name producers shaping your sound." The line landed like a blade wrapped in silk. Kelly blinked, jaw tight, and said quietly, "I have a lot of creative control. Every lyric means something to me." Faith folded her arms. "Sure, but when the label signs the checks, there's only so much control anyone really has." The audience gave a soft, uneasy laugh, like they weren't sure if they were supposed to. Behind the cameras, a producer mouthed, "Cut to B-cam," and another whispered, "Stay on Kelly." Kelly's hands gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles showing. Her eyes never left Faith's. The room went still enough to hear the hum of the lights. Faith leaned back, comfortable in the silence she'd made. Kelly took a slow breath, voice calm but clipped. "You know, Faith, American Idol didn't give me an image. It gave me a chance. Millions of kids watching finally saw that talent doesn't have to come from Nashville or LA or wherever the industry says it should." Faith's smile stayed frozen. "Of course, it's a beautiful story. Votes, TV, a few tears, and boom, a career. That's the new way, right?" The crowd made a small sound, half gasp, half groan, and Kelly straightened in her chair. "It's the fair way," she said, voice low but firm. "A way for people who never had a door to finally walk through one." Faith's reply came smooth and quiet, cutting all the same. "Or maybe just a way for the audience to decide who fits their story best." The control room fell silent again. Everyone could see it now. The line in the sand had just been drawn. Kelly leaned forward, her voice steady but her eyes showing the first flicker of heat. "You talk about stories, Faith, but those songs, the ones you're calling manufactured, came from real life. Since You've Been Gone, Because of You, Stronger, those weren't just hooks, they were my life, my heartbreaks, my family. I wasn't acting when I sang them. The audience clapped softly, unsure if it was support or defense. Faith didn't even glance their way. She smiled, slow and sharp. "Oh, I'm sure they meant a lot to you, Kelly. They were perfect. Clean pain, marketable pain, the kind that sells records. I just wonder how much of that story was yours and how much was crafted for prime time." The words hit like static through the air. Kelly's smile cracked. "You think my life was scripted?" she asked. Faith shrugged, still calm. "I think it was convenient. A small-town girl with a big dream, a tough past, a few tears on camera. It plays well." "America loves that arc," the crowd murmured, uncomfortable now. Kelly sat back for a moment, looking like she was deciding whether to let it slide or to meet fire with fire. Then she leaned in again, no smile this time. "You know what, Faith? At least my story's real. I didn't spend 20 years pretending to be some perfect country princess while everything behind the curtain was falling apart." The sentence landed like a dropped mic. The room went still, the kind of still that swallows sound. Faith's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing, and for a second, no one breathed. The band stopped shuffling papers. Someone in the front row gasped. Faith's voice came out low, almost a whisper. "How dare you?" Kelly didn't move, just stared back. Faith rose slowly, hands trembling but face tight as glass. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. The security team near the stage shifted one step forward, not rushing, just ready. Faith's voice carried, quiet but full of warning. "You don't talk about my family. Not here. Not ever." Kelly's chair creaked as she leaned forward, meeting her gaze head-on. Faith's face stayed hard, her voice dropping into that slow, deliberate tone meant to wound. "You really should calm down, little girl," she said. "You've been on television long enough to know tantrums don't play well." The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath that filled the studio. Kelly froze for a half-second, then leaned forward with that mix of disbelief and steel. "Little girl?" she repeated, her voice quiet but sharp. "Faith, I'm a grown woman with kids, a career, and more than a few scars to prove it. I'm not some kid you can bully into silence." Faith tilted her head, unbothered. "You still act like one," she said. "All feelings, no backbone. You sing about strength because you're still trying to find it." The crowd murmured again, torn between shock and discomfort. Kelly's jaw flexed, but she kept her voice level. "You don't get to define strength for me, Faith." "Not anymore." For the first time, Faith's smile faltered. Kelly stood, not dramatically, just enough to close the distance between them. "You talk about real artists," she said, voice rising. "But real artists grow. They evolve. They don't spend 15 years trying to convince everyone they're still on top." Faith crossed her arms, a flash of anger behind her composure. "You think hosting a daytime show makes you relevant?" she shot back. "I built a legacy before you even auditioned. You built a brand. There's a difference." The applause that usually followed Kelly's comebacks never came. The audience just watched, frozen in that uneasy quiet of something going too far. Kelly took a breath, her tone lower but laced with venom now. "At least my brand didn't depend on pretending my life was perfect," she said. Faith blinked, unsure where it was heading, until Kelly added softly, "Or on pretending your marriage still is." The words hit like a gunshot in a small room. Faith's hands clenched. "What did you just say?" Kelly didn't back down. "I said maybe people would respect honesty more than another glossy magazine cover." Faith's voice dropped to a growl. "Don't you ever mention my husband again." She took a step forward, closing the gap, her finger pointed but shaking. The camera caught the movement. Security stepped closer, visible now in the edge of the frame. The audience didn't move. Kelly stood her ground, eyes locked on Faith, both women breathing hard in the silence that followed. The tension had already stretched thin when a faint crackle cut through the studio speakers. It was barely audible, but the mics picked it up. That sharp, telltale buzz of someone speaking from the control room. "We're long," a voice said. "Push on the idle angle." The words hung in the air like static, too quick for most viewers to catch, but clear enough for the people on stage. Kelly's eyes flicked up instinctively toward the glass booth above. Faith heard it too, and smiled. "Well, there's your script," she said under her breath, loud enough for the microphones to pick it up. The crowd reacted with a soft, confused ripple. Kelly blinked, realizing what Faith had just implied, that this entire clash, this chaos, was planned. "Excuse me?" Kelly said, her voice flat but laced with disbelief. Faith's smirk widened. "Guess the producers needed ratings. Can't blame you, sweetheart. Manufactured drama made you famous once before. That line landed like a slap." The control room went silent. No one moved. Even the floor manager froze, headset half raised. A woman from the front row, silver hair, clutching an old Faith Hill vinyl, stood up without meaning to, her voice trembling. "We love you both," she said, hands shaking. "Don't do this. Please." For a second, everyone seemed to soften, until Faith turned toward her, exasperated. "Sit down, please," she snapped. The tone, sharp, cold, cut straight through the room. The audience shifted, the sympathy gone in an instant. Someone muttered, "Wow," loud enough for a boom mic to catch it. Kelly didn't say a word, but her eyes followed Faith's every move. She could feel it. The shift. The room wasn't hers anymore. It was Kelly's. The energy that had started as curiosity was now loyalty, turning against the guest who had gone too far. Faith's jaw clenched as she looked around, realizing it too. Behind the cameras, two operators exchanged glances, both shaking their heads. The stage manager, a woman who'd worked every episode since the pilot, crossed her arms and whispered, "Unbelievable." Kelly caught the movement out of the corner of her eye. For the first time since the clash began, she felt the crew behind her. Not as employees, but as people standing with her. Faith looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to back her up. No one did. Even the lighting operator perched above hesitated before keeping the spotlight steady. Kelly exhaled slowly, her pulse calming just enough for clarity to slip back in. When she looked at Faith again, her voice was lower, steadier. "You're in my house now," she said quietly. And though the line wasn't meant to be final, it sounded like a warning, one the entire studio understood. Kelly took a deep breath and stepped out from behind her desk. The move was small, but it changed everything. Without the barrier, she looked taller, grounded. The cue cards sat untouched, the teleprompter kept scrolling, but she didn't need them anymore. "This is my show," she said quietly, almost to herself, before lifting her head to face Faith. "My people, my audience, my crew, and I won't let anyone come in here and tear them down." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried, the kind of calm that makes a room lean in. Faith didn't answer. She just watched, arms folded, chin lifted like she was daring Kelly to keep going. Kelly did. "You know, Faith," she said, her voice even, "this isn't about music anymore, or idol, or fame. This is about respect." The audience was silent now, not the tense silence from before, but something heavier. "We've both been through this business," Kelly continued, pacing slowly. "We know how it chews people up. We know what it feels like to be doubted, to have strangers pick you apart. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as another artist. You started seeing me as a threat." Faith's eyes narrowed, but she didn't interrupt. Kelly's tone softened just slightly. "You turned hurt into harm. And that's what breaks my heart, because I looked up to you." Faith laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Don't do that," she said. "Don't turn this into some moral lecture." Kelly shook her head. "It's not a lecture. It's a boundary." She stopped pacing, meeting Faith's gaze head on. "You can come here and challenge me. You can disagree with me, but you can't sit in my house and tear me down for existing." "Not today." The audience began to nod, quiet murmurs of support building from the back rows. Kelly took a step closer, her voice dropping to something gentle but firm. "Help me understand why you came here with this much anger," she said. "I didn't invite you here to fight. I invited you here to talk." For a moment, Faith's mask cracked, her eyes flickered, glassy in the stage lights. She looked like she might actually speak, might let something real slip through. But then she caught herself, jaw tightening again. "I don't owe you anything," she said, her voice colder than before. The small vulnerability vanished as fast as it appeared. Kelly exhaled slowly, her disappointment showing but her tone steady. "You're right," she said. "You don't owe me anything. But maybe you owe yourself a little honesty." Faith didn't respond. She just turned her gaze away, and for the first time all afternoon, she looked small. Not beaten, not broken, just human. And that silence said more than any insult ever could. Kelly stood still for a long moment, the air heavy with everything unsaid. Then she turned to face the audience. "I want to apologize," she said, her voice calm but laced with exhaustion. "You came here expecting joy, laughter, maybe a song or two. Not this. What you've seen today, that's not what this show stands for." The crowd stayed quiet, every pair of eyes on her. "We lift people up here," she continued. "We don't tear them down. We don't trade kindness for ratings." Then she looked back at Faith, and her tone hardened just slightly. "And since that's clearly not what you came here to do, I think it's best if we stop this now." Faith blinked, stunned. "You're ending the interview?" she asked, half laughing. Kelly didn't flinch. "I'm asking you to leave." The audience gasped, a wave of shock rolling through the room. Faith leaned forward, incredulous. "You wouldn't dare!" Kelly's response came fast and flat. "I would." The words echoed through the studio, and it was suddenly crystal clear. The power had shifted. Faith glanced toward the cameras, then to the wings, where two security guards had moved just close enough to be seen but not to interfere. The tension was thick enough to taste. Faith tried to laugh it off, though her voice cracked just slightly. "Come on, Kelly. Let me sing one song and we'll reset." The audience came to see a performance. She motioned to the band, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The band leader, a man who'd played beside Kelly for years, looked up from his keyboard, then shook his head once. Slow, deliberate, final. The audience caught it, and a low murmur rippled through the room. Someone near the front booed under their breath. Then another joined. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Faith's smile disappeared. She looked from face to face, the band, the crew, the audience, and realized the moment was gone. Kelly didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat. She just said quietly, "We're done here." And that single line hit harder than any shout ever could. Faith stood frozen for a moment, eyes locked on Kelly, her pride wrestling with disbelief. Then, without another word, she reached for her purse, the sound of the clasp snapping shut, cutting through the silence like a pin drop. She adjusted her blazer, lifted her chin high, and turned toward the exit. No music played. The band stayed still. The only sound was the faint hum of the stage lights and the soft rustle of her heels against the floor. Every camera stayed trained on her, but not one followed. Faith disappeared through the side curtain, swallowed by the shadow of the hallway beyond. The audience didn't clap, didn't boo. They just watched, wide-eyed, realizing they'd just witnessed something no one could script. Kelly stayed standing, still catching her breath. The stage felt bigger now. Too big, too quiet. She looked around at her audience, the same one that had cheered minutes earlier, and said softly, "You can't control life's curveballs, but when they come, you swing anyway." Her voice trembled on the first words, but by the end, it was steady, grounded. The crowd rose as one, a standing ovation that wasn't loud, it was reverent. People weren't cheering for the drama, they were cheering for composure. Kelly blinked hard, managing a faint smile as she nodded to the band, who finally struck a gentle chord, easing the room back to life. The camera zoomed out slowly, capturing the image of Kelly standing alone on her stage, shoulders squared, heart still pounding. Up in the control room, a producer hovered over the console, finger ready to hit the go-to-break button. "We're hot," someone whispered. "Cut now." But before they could, Kelly lifted her hand slightly toward the booth, a small, firm signal. "Stay with me," she said quietly into her mic. She turned back to the crowd. "We're not ending on chaos, we're ending on grace." The crew paused, hands frozen over their controls. Kelly looked directly into the camera, her voice calm and sure. "This is real life," she said. "Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it hurts. But it's always worth showing up for." Then she smiled, soft and tired, but genuine. The studio lights dimmed just enough to make her glow at center stage, one woman reclaiming her space after the storm. And when the screen finally faded to black, The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was respect. Within minutes of Faith's walk-off, the internet lit up like wildfire. Split screens flooded TikTok and X, Kelly standing her ground on one side, Faith storming off on the other. The hashtags started almost instantly. Hashtag Team Kelly, hashtag Team Faith, hashtag Daytime Meltdown, hashtag Respect the Stage. Comment sections turned into war zones. Some praised Kelly for staying calm under fire, calling her the voice of grace under pressure. Others accused her of humiliating a legend on live TV. By sunset, think pieces were already rolling out. Entertainment blogs framed it as work ethic versus gatekeeping, while culture writers debated what it meant for women in the industry, one fighting to stay relevant, the other proving she already was. Screens across America replayed the same 10 seconds. Faith standing, pointing, walking. And Kelly, unmoved, reclaiming her stage. Behind the scenes, chaos had a different rhythm. Network Legal sent out a 3-paragraph draft labeled Preliminary Statement. Words like unfortunate incident, respect, and live broadcast spontaneity filled the email. Faith's publicist, meanwhile, hit send on her own version of the story, claiming her client was taken out of context and deeply disappointed by the editing narrative. It didn't help that there had been no edits. It was live, uncut, and undeniable. Kelly's executive producer was fielding calls from affiliates across the country. Some stations wanted reassurance it wouldn't happen again. Others admitted the ratings were spiking so fast they couldn't look away. One network VP called it disaster gold. Kelly refused to join the call. She was still in her dressing room, silent, replaying every second in her head. Then came the knock. It was a junior producer, barely 24, headset still around her neck, tears in her eyes. "It was me," she said. Kelly looked up, confused. The hot mic, the push, the idle angle. "I didn't mean for it to air." Kelly didn't get angry. She just listened. "They told me to stir it up a little," the girl said, voice cracking, "just to make it more interesting." Kelly's expression didn't change, just a slow, quiet exhale. "We don't need fire starters," she said. "We need fairness." The girl nodded, eyes wet. Kelly placed a hand on her shoulder, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder. "If we forget that, we're no better than the chaos we just stopped." It wasn't scolding. It was something deeper, the tone of someone realizing the fight wasn't just with Faith. It was with the system itself. The next morning, the debate hadn't cooled. It had evolved. Radio hosts dissected it. Podcasts played the full audio. Viewers were split down the middle. Was Kelly right to draw the line on air? Or did the show itself cross into spectacle the moment cameras kept rolling? On social media, everyone had an opinion, and no one agreed. Yet through the noise, one thing stayed constant. People were still talking. About kindness, about authenticity, about where the line between entertainment and exploitation really lies. And that, maybe, was the real aftermath. Not just a clash between two stars, but a mirror held up to everyone watching. The story wasn't over, it had just begun. The next day, Kelly returned to her studio. The stage looked the same. Same lights, same desk, same mug. But the air carried something different. You could feel it in how the crew moved. Quieter, gentler. The cameras rolled and Kelly looked straight into the lens. No cue cards, no script this time. "Yesterday was hard," she said. "And honestly, I've replayed it 100 times in my head." She paused, hands resting lightly on the desk. "This show has always been about connection, about celebrating people. But sometimes that gets tested. And when it does, you have a choice. You can chase the moment, or you can protect the message." The audience sat silent, hanging on every word. "Kindness isn't weakness," she continued softly. "It's a standard. One we should never lower, no matter how loud the world gets." The quote was everywhere within hours. Morning news anchors replayed it. Journalists called it the line that reset daytime TV. But for Kelly, it wasn't about viral headlines. It was about reclaiming peace. After the taping, she lingered on the empty set while the crew packed up. The guest chair sat under a single key light, still warm from the day before. She stared at it for a long time. There was no triumph in her eyes, just reflection. That quiet ache that comes from standing up for something and realizing it cost more than applause. The camera operators caught one last shot before the lights went down. The empty chair, a shadow stretching across the floor, and the faint echo of her voice saying, "Kindness isn't weakness, it's a standard." The screen faded to black, and for once, daytime television left its viewers not with a laugh or a headline, but with a question that stayed long after the credits rolled. If you made it this far, you know this wasn't just a talk show meltdown. It was a moment that made everyone stop and think about respect, power, and what it really means to stand your ground. So tell me, whose side were you on that day? Was Kelly right to draw the line, or did Faith just say what others were too scared to? Drop your thoughts below, and if you love stories where truth meets tension and calm meets chaos, don't forget to hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join us for more real moments that shake Hollywood.